Just recently there was a story, and I know one of your attorneys held a news conference. There was a story about you wanting to have a little white boy play you in a Pepsi commercial.
That is so stupid.
By the early 1990s, Michael Jackson was the most famous person on Earth. But with that fame came an avalanche of rumors, none louder than the speculation about his changing skin color. Tabloids claimed he was bleaching his skin. Others accused him of trying to erase his black identity. For years, Jackson said nothing. But in 1993, during a live primetime interview with Oprah Winfrey, he finally addressed it. And what he revealed silenced the world, if only for a moment. Watch this carefully. Oprah asks the question everyone else had tiptoed around, and Jackson, visibly tense, explains something few people at the time had even heard of: vitiligo, a skin disorder that causes depigmentation. He doesn't rant, he doesn't lash out, but you can feel the hurt in every word.
The color of your skin is obviously different than it was when you were younger.
Yes.
And so I think it has caused a great deal of speculation and controversy as to what you have done or are doing. Are you bleaching your skin? And is your skin lighter because you don't like being black?
Okay, number one, as I know of, there is no such thing as skin bleaching. I have never seen it. I don't know what it is.
Well, they used to have those products growing up. I used to hear, always use bleach and glow, but you'd have to have about 300,000 gallons to...
Okay, number one, this is the situation. Yes. I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help.
What you just saw was a cultural turning point. For the first time, the most reclusive superstar on Earth pulled back the curtain, not for promotion, but for protection. And yet, even after that raw moment, the media didn't let up. Rumors persisted. Headlines still mocked his appearance. Comedians made it a punchline. The public wasn't ready to believe that the king of pop was suffering from a real painful condition. In the years that followed, Jackson became increasingly private. This interview became one of his last long-form sit-downs. And to this day, it's one of the few times he ever explained himself without a melody or a mask. The interview didn't go wrong because of Jackson. It went wrong because of us. Because a man trying to share his truth was met with disbelief, judgment, and ridicule. What should have been a moment of healing became a cautionary tale about celebrity, vulnerability, and how quick we are to mock what we don't understand.
I'm only here because there isn't a Knicks game. Don't get excited.
Oh, come on!
By 1994, Madonna wasn't just a pop star, she was a cultural battlefield. Loved and loathed in equal measure, she had already conquered music, film, and fashion. But what she did on The Late Show with David Letterman wasn't just controversial, it was nuclear. It would go on to become the most censored talk show interview in network history, and it wasn't a meltdown. It was a calculated strike. What you're about to see is not just awkward, it's war. Madonna walks out chewing gum, waving a pair of underwear, and immediately challenges Letterman's authority. She curses. She toys with him. She refuses to play by the rules. Watch closely. This isn't an interview. It's a power struggle on live TV.
I don't know why I get so much.
You realize this is being broadcast, don't you?
Yeah.
There's a lovely...
Come on. I gave him my underpants and he won't smell.
What brings
Wait a
you...
minute, aren't you gonna smell them? I gave them to you for a reason.
Let's see what I'm doing at my house right now.
No.
But you like basketball a great deal. Where's your interest in basketball?
That microphone is really long.
And this is... What a revelation.
Both questions?
Oh, come on. Come on. What am I speaking Chinese here? Now stop it.
You can't get through a show without talking about me or thinking about me.
That wasn't a performance. That was Madonna deliberately hijacking late-night television. She dropped 14 F-bombs, refused to answer personal questions, accused Letterman of sexual obsession, and pushed every single button she could reach. She even told the studio audience to get over it when they gasped. CBS was not amused. The network had to bleep and blur so many parts of the episode that some local stations refused to air it. The FCC was flooded with complaints, and media outlets called it a career-ending moment. But they were wrong. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Madonna had grown tired of the media's hypocrisy, of being objectified, interrogated, judged. So she turned the interview into a piece of performance art. If they wanted a wild woman, she gave them one, with the volume turned all the way up. In hindsight, this interview wasn't just a scandal. It was a landmark, a moment where one woman flipped the power dynamic on its head, where a pop icon took a hammer to the format itself. And whether you saw it as cringeworthy, iconic, or unhinged, you felt it. The world did. That's why Madonna's 1994 interview isn't just one of the most controversial in talk show history. It's one of the most unforgettable.
Have you ever thought about retiring?
Why?
Was there never a moment that you thought it might be time to retire, or you would want?
Why?
Jerry Lewis was a titan, a slapstick pioneer, a box office juggernaut, and a man who helped shape the very language of comedy. But in 2017, at age 91, the entertainment icon sat down for what would become his final interview, a quiet disaster that no one saw coming. It was supposed to be a tribute. Instead, it became a masterclass in discomfort. The interview was part of a Hollywood Reporter segment featuring a group of entertainment legends. Everyone else gave stories, laughs, reflections. And then, there was Jerry. Watch what happens. He doesn't smile. He doesn't answer questions. He barely moves. And when he does speak, it's with one-word answers and seething disdain. This wasn't an interview. It was a standoff.
Similarities with them?
None.
What do you think drives people like you to want to keep working?
Because we do it well.
20 years ago, how is it different for you?
It isn't.
Not at all?
Not at all.
How do you keep the material fresh for yourself?
By working at it.
That clip became viral for all the wrong reasons. The journalist, visibly rattled, later said it was the most hostile interview he'd ever conducted. Social media exploded. Some laughed at the absurdity, others called it tragic. Was Lewis being mean? Was he confused? Was he just tired of showbiz? Fans and critics debated, but Jerry gave no clarification. He simply walked away, and that was it. No final reflection, no curtain call, just a 7-minute interview where one of Hollywood's most legendary performers refused to play the part. There's something haunting about the way it ended. A man who spent his life commanding stages and screens, saying almost nothing in his final public moment. Cold, silent, done. Jerry Lewis didn't bomb that interview. He buried it. And with it, he may have buried the idea that legends owe us anything at all.
What you have on tonight is wonderful. This is wonderful. And when you walked out, many people became attentive.
In the 1990s, Bill Cosby was still America's dad, a comedy icon, a family man, a symbol of warmth and respectability. So when he sat down with a young Sofia Vergara, an up-and-coming Colombian model and actress, no one expected what came next. But time has a cruel way of reframing things. And today, this once-forgotten interview is watched not with laughter, but with unease. At first glance, it seems playful. Cosby is grinning ear to ear. But look a little closer. His gaze lingers too long. His jokes aren't really jokes. His comments toe the line, then stumble straight across it. And Sophia, she keeps smiling. Because what else could she do on live television?
You make me feel young again. You make me feel very excited. Look at me. I can
This is too sexy, I'm leaving.
At the time, nobody said a word. No backlash, no headlines. Just another day in celebrity television. But years later, in the wake of dozens of sexual assault allegations against Cosby, this clip resurfaced, and suddenly, everything felt different. What once played as flirtation now reads as control. What was once seen as teasing now feels like a power play, a deeply uncomfortable moment hiding in plain sight. Vergara, to her credit, laughed it off, but viewers today see the tension behind her smile, the unease behind her laugh, a woman caught in a moment she never asked for. This interview didn't explode when it aired. It smoldered quietly for decades, waiting for context to catch up. And when it did, the message was clear. The signs were always there. We just weren't looking. In hindsight, this wasn't just an awkward interview. It was a red flag, one of many. And the fact that it went unnoticed for so long, that might be the most disturbing part of all.
And now, she graces the cover of the new Playboy magazine and stars in her very own pay-per-view special on June 11th entitled Farrah Fawcett, All of Me.
By the late 90s, Farrah Fawcett was more than just a former Charlie's Angel. She was a pop culture icon, a symbol of beauty, glamour, and that untouchable 70s fame. But when she appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman in 1997, it wasn't elegance that people remembered. It was confusion, slurred speech, wandering thoughts. A live interview so awkward, so surreal, it left the audience stunned, and the media scrambling to explain what they had just seen. Watch closely. Farrah isn't joking, and Letterman isn't laughing. She's rambling, unfocused, and visibly disconnected. She changes subjects mid-sentence, forgets what she's saying, and at one point, just stares blankly into space. This wasn't television gold. It was a very public unraveling.
How haven't I been?
I don't know. That's what I had just asked you.
Oh. Well.
How you doing? You all right?
Don't I seem all right?
You seem fine. Was there traffic? Were you
There
stuck
were
somewhere?
people. Lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go and there's a oh golly, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Central Park.
Oh, there's a road.
A road. All right. Road in the park.
Trying to. I had control. So.
The clip you just saw aired live, and the backlash was immediate. Audiences were stunned. Headlines the next day accused Farrah of being intoxicated, high, or mentally unstable. Columnists called it a career low. But here's the part that makes this interview so painful in retrospect. Farrah never confirmed she was under the influence of anything. In fact, she later suggested the media's response was cruel, sexist, and sensationalist, and many agreed. Letterman handled it as best he could, shifting between sarcasm and concern. But even he couldn't hide his discomfort. For Farrah, it became a defining moment, not of her work, not of her talent, but of her decline. And for talk show history, it became the gold standard for how quickly an interview can go completely off the rails. Whether Farrah was simply nervous, impaired, or suffering something deeper, we may never fully know. But what's undeniable is how the world reacted, not with empathy, but with mockery. What should have been a light promotional appearance became one of the most painfully awkward interviews in late-night history, and a haunting chapter in the story of a Hollywood legend.
Word, please welcome Cher.
She was a Grammy winner, an Oscar contender, and a fashion icon. He was the rising king of late-night TV, known for sarcasm, smirks, and passive-aggressive jabs. In 1986, those two worlds collided when Cher finally agreed to appear on Late Night with David Letterman after years of turning him down. But there was a condition. She wanted to tell him, on air, exactly what she thought of him. What followed was one of the boldest, most uncomfortable celebrity interviews in talk show history. From the moment Cher walks on stage, the tension is obvious. She's smiling, but it's razor sharp. Letterman tries to charm her, but she's not here to play nice. Then, with the crowd watching, she drops it. Because you're an asshole, that's why I didn't come on. Let's watch the moment Cher detonated live television.
I don't know, because I thought that I would never want to do this show with you.
Now, why? Now, let's explore this a little. Why? Because you thought I was
an ass.
They're of course not booing, they're just chanting, Cher, Cher. And of course, for you folks at home who may have missed that, what she said was she thought I was an awfully nice guy.
The audience erupted, partly in shock, partly in joy. Letterman, visibly stunned, tried to laugh it off, but the mood never recovered. The conversation limped on, with Cher throwing icy barbs and Letterman clearly rattled. And the media, they went wild. Cher slams Letterman on live TV. Pop diva goes for the kill. But behind the insult was a real grudge. Cher had been upset for years over the way Letterman had mocked her in monologues and interviews, and she wasn't going to let it slide. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't staged. It was raw, real, and risky, and it changed the dynamic between celebrity guests and late-night hosts forever. What made this interview go horribly wrong wasn't a meltdown. It was a moment of honesty, brutal, public honesty. Cher said what so many stars wish they could, And in doing so, she didn't just roast a talk show host. She burned the format to the ground for a few glorious minutes. Years later, Letterman called her one of his most unforgettable guests. No surprise there, because in 1986, Cher didn't just appear on Late Night, she took it over.
I'd like to ask you something. All right. It occurred to me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise, and it's got a lot going for it.
David Bowie was always ahead of the curve, in fashion, in sound, in social thought. By 1983, he had reinvented himself again, this time with his mega-hit album, Let's Dance. He was MTV's dream, stylish, global, and wildly popular. But when he sat down for an interview with the network that same year, Bowie wasn't there just to promote a record. He came with a question, a quiet one, but one that would send shockwaves through the music industry. At first, it seems like any other press interview, small talk, polite laughs. But then Bowie flips the script. Instead of answering questions, he asks one, why doesn't MTV play videos by black artists? Watch how the interviewer reacts. There's hesitation, excuses, deflection. But Bowie doesn't let it slide. He presses forward, calm but unwavering.
I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
I think that we're trying to move in that direction. We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.
That's evident. It's evident in the fact that the only few black artists that one does see are on about 2:30 in the morning or to around 6. Very few are featured predominantly during the day.
No, that's a...
I'll say that over the last couple of weeks these things have been changing, but it's a slow process.
That exchange wasn't just uncomfortable, it was historic. At a time when the industry either ignored or marginalized black artists, Bowie used his platform to call it out on their own turf. He didn't shout, he didn't grandstand. He simply asked a question they couldn't answer. The interviewer stumbled through excuses, claiming there wasn't an audience or that it didn't fit the format. But Bowie knew better, and now so did everyone watching. The interview quickly spread among music journalists and insiders. It's now remembered as one of the first public confrontations over racial inequality in music television, and Bowie's calm defiance gave other artists the confidence to speak up. Bowie didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm off. He didn't need to. In just a few sentences, he exposed the quiet prejudice embedded in the entertainment system, and he did it live, on their airwaves. It wasn't a blow-up. It was a mic drop, and it changed the conversation. That's why Bowie's 1983 MTV interview wasn't just uncomfortable, it was revolutionary.
My first guest once dropped out of acting for 8 years to work as a carpenter. When he returned to acting, he starred in films that have so far grossed $1 billion or so. His latest film opening this week is Blade Runner. Please welcome Harrison Ford.
By 1982, Harrison Ford was riding high. Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, he was already one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. And you'd expect that kind of mega-stardom to come with a bit of swagger, but when he appeared on Late Night with David Letterman, what the audience got wasn't Ford the action hero. It was Ford the ice wall, and what followed was one of the most painfully awkward interviews of early late-night TV. Letterman, still early in his run, tries to play it cool. He throws out jokes, eases into the usual talk show banter, but Ford isn't biting at all. Watch his face, his tone, his body language. It's less, let's talk, and more, why am I here?
Anything then that they're doing, you have to show up and be in, right?
That was the idea.
Yeah. Any memorable appearances come to mind here?
No.
Yeah.
No.
How did, I mean, when you're going by and you see an Indiana Jones mug or something, does that, what is that?
Nothing. I don't take it personally. I don't have any relationship to it. I can't figure out what it has to do with me.
It would have been a different, I guess it would have been a different film, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're going to pause.
Yes.
That wasn't just a bad vibe. It was a full-on shutdown. Ford deflected every question about his career, refused to talk about money, and gave the kind of dry, flat responses that would kill a lesser host. At one point, Letterman practically pleads with him to loosen up. Ford doesn't. Was he tired? Was he annoyed? Or was this just classic Harrison Ford? Gruff, guarded, and over the whole press game. Whatever it was, it created nearly 10 minutes of pure second-hand embarrassment. Viewers squirmed. Letterman tried to save it, but Ford gave nothing. Zero. Zilch. In the years that followed, Harrison Ford would become famous for these kinds of interviews, short answers, grumpy charm, total disdain for Hollywood polish. But this was the first taste, and for Letterman, it was a wake-up call. Not every guest comes to play. Sometimes, the biggest action star in the world just shows up, sits down and leaves you hanging, and somehow, that might make it even more iconic.
Tell me, I'm interested because I did a, well, this is a dangerous thing to say because I don't know my taping air schedule, but as I sit here now, which of course is not real of time, I just taped a couple of shows on cocaine, and Lady from California was talking about the scene out there.
By 1978, Chevy Chase was riding high. He had become the breakout star of Saturday Night Live, a comic force known for physical humor and snarky charm. But when he appeared on the Dick Cavett show that year, audiences got more than just jokes. They got a peek behind the curtain of 1970s Hollywood, and what they saw was powder white. This wasn't a bombastic meltdown. It was a quiet moment that said far more than it meant to. The topic of discussion? Hollywood parties. Chevy jokes about the cocaine, the orgies, the so-called creative circles. Cavett laughs nervously, trying to move on, but Chevy keeps digging. The joke goes on a little too long. The laughter starts to feel strained. Watch closely. What sounds like comedy might not be comedy at all.
Is it true that Bruce Dern is probably the only clean actor in Hollywood these days, or one would get that impression at a party?
It doesn't smell that clean. I don't go to a lot of Bruce's cocaine parties. I understand he gives a lot of them. They run, and then they do cocaine. I don't...
You mean he sat and lied to
I don't know
me
why you would... Let me just get this. It has to be something like that. I don't go to many parties. I don't think that it's that prevalent out there. It's darn hard to get it.
The clip caused a ripple, not a tidal wave. After all, this was the 70s, and cocaine had become disturbingly normalized in elite circles. But for viewers at home, hearing it spoken so casually with no shame or filter was jarring. What made it uncomfortable wasn't just what Chevy said, it was how normal it seemed. There was no wink, no boundary, just a celebrity casually outlining the hedonism of a generation, while everyone chuckled. Years later, as the devastating effects of that drug culture became clearer, overdoses, ruined careers, and even deaths, the interview took on a darker tone. What once felt like improv, comedy began to look like a confession. This wasn't a scandalous breakdown or a viral walk-off. It was something subtler and maybe more dangerous. A reminder of how easily Hollywood laughs off its darkest corners when the cameras are rolling. Chevy Chase didn't mean to reveal anything that night, but he did. And for those who listened between the laughs, the message was clear. The party was never really funny. It was just out of control.
We were just talking about those old interviews we talked about earlier, where they,
Yes,
for
you
some reason,
started
wanted to know
talking
what a famous person's favorite color was, for
Well,
reasons I never
Skolsky, for instance, became absolutely famous, Sidney Skolsky, and one of our really great columnists, I must say he was.
By 1971, Bette Davis was already a legend. She had survived the studio system, feuded with the best of them, and carved out a place as one of the most iconic and sharp-tongued stars in Hollywood history. So when she agreed to appear on the Dick Cavett Show, producers expected class, wit, and maybe a little sass. What they got was a hurricane in a designer dress. The moment Davis enters, cigarette in hand, you can feel the balance of power shift. Cavett, normally in full control, barely gets a word in. Bette lights up, both literally and figuratively, and starts swinging at her rivals, her directors, even her own legacy. Watch how quickly she goes from charming to combative. Every compliment has a barb, every joke hides a jab. And Cavett, he's hanging on for dear life.
You know, like people say when I'm coming on with someone like you for 90 minutes, don't you want to, know what's going to happen? I don't want to know the question. If you should ask me something that I really don't want to go into, with a perfectly nice smile and not insulting, you can say I don't want to talk about it. Like many bad interviews, this is what happens. It's the actor's fault. Tell you about my wedding night, you'd be on the floor for 3 hours. No, I did not mean that! No! I meant laughing on the floor.
Viewers were split. Some were thrilled. Finally, a star who spoke her mind without filters or apologies. Others were stunned at how aggressively Davis dismantled nearly every name in Hollywood. She took shots at Joan Crawford, dismissed modern film stars as amateurs, and even accused interviewers of asking idiotic questions. And poor Cavett? He tried to keep up, but Davis wasn't there to be tamed. She was there to dominate. Critics called it electrifying, disrespectful, and a vintage performance of pure Bet. Even decades later, it's still considered one of the most confrontational and entertaining interviews in talk show history. Bette Davis didn't lose control. She took it. She came to that stage to remind the world exactly who she was. Not a starlet, not a guest, but a queen. And while the interview may not have gone as Cavett planned, it went exactly as Davis intended. It was dramatic. It was dangerous. It was unforgettable. And in the grand finale of Golden Age interviews that went horribly wrong, it was absolutely perfect.